Are you tired of being told what to think and how to act? Well, you are not alone. In case you haven't realized it, you have an internal GPS. It knows all you need to know about how to live your life. So it's about time you stopped letting the media and the government tell you what is true for you. In fact, it is exactly that time. It's time to think for yourself. And here to make sure you're doing just that is your host, mediator, author, and lawyer, Carol Gold.
Hi, it's Sunday, June 7th. I'm Carol Gold, and welcome to Think for Yourself. I read an interesting article today about Jeffrey Katzenberg. He is the founder of DreamWorks, the film and production company, and he's also the former CEO of Disney, I think from 1984 to 1994. So he's a Hollywood player, literally, and he's also co-chair of the Biden re-election campaign. And what I heard is that he's got a bit of trouble in Hollywood because right up until the debate between President Biden and ex-President Trump, Jeffrey Katzenberg was assuring all of the big donors, who, by the way, I think came up with 30 million before the debate. He was assuring all the big Hollywood donors that President Biden was sharp and able to be reelected and able to govern through his next 4 years were he to be reelected. Then the debate happened. And so since the debate, what I understand from what I read is that Jeffrey Katzenberg has fallen in, to put it mildly, disfavor. There's rage at him out in Hollywood, and no one is believing him. Why is that important, and why would I start off this podcast with that story? Well, the reason is, when you don't have your word, you have nothing. It doesn't matter how much money you have. I can assure you that Jeffrey Katzenberg, for the most part, is done in the circles in which he travels. Yes, for a while, his money and his influence that he's accumulated over the years as a Hollywood player will gain him a little distance, but he's done. He's done because it is true that when you don't have your word, you have nothing. You know, I was raised by a father who taught me that. He taught me that my word was everything. And as a result, and for other reasons, I grew up a bit obsessive about telling the truth and a bit reactionary when it came to lying or finding that someone had lied to me. And the reason is that when someone lies, let's say to someone else, to another person, and that person finds out, what is breached is trust. And it's probably the hardest thing to ever get back in relationship, whether it's friend to friend, parent to child, spouse to spouse. And I know this because I was a divorce attorney for many years, and I saw it happen in many marriages. And I had it happen in my own, actually. So I know the damage that falsehoods, which is the nice word, and lies can do to relationships. But most importantly, they do something to the person who spews them. In the case of Joe Biden, I think the people who should be at the top of the list for breaching trust are the White House press secretary, the cabinet members, the administrative positions within this administration, certainly the mainstream media, everyone and anyone who told you that Joe Biden was competent and cognizant and able to govern, because he hasn't been for a very long time. And while he continues to lie about it, and that's something I want to address a little later in the podcast, I think the greatest, I guess anger's probably the right word, should be toward those people around him, from family to friends to professional associations, to anyone who interacted with him probably as far back as his last campaign to run for president, which is why he did it from his basement, probably from then onward. Certainly, as I recently read, January, I think 23, the White House physician, who, by the way, whose ethics and whose license should be on the line, the White House physician called in a doctor from Walter Reed Hospital to the White House who met with that White House physician, the doctor, and I believe another physician unnamed from Walter Reed. The doctor who was called in is one of the experts in the country on Parkinson's disease. And when I read that the other day, I thought, well, Parkinson's probably doesn't explain it all. What about the cognitive stuff? And then I looked up Parkinson's, and then I looked up advanced Parkinson's. And it does in fact explain everything. It explains his gait. It explains his staring. It explains his frozen facial features. It explains his cognitive lapses and his cognitive insufficiencies. So I'm not a doctor, but having read it and having read that the doctor who's the expert in Parkinson's was at the White House in January of 23, I have to say it's probably Parkinson's and it's very advanced. But again, I'll get back to him in a minute. I want to stick with the people who have lied to you. Now, they've lied to me too, but I haven't believed them for a very long time. Because I believe what I hear with my own ears and see with my own eyes. In most instances, that may change in a world of advanced AI. But for now, I still function that way. And I also listen to my inner guidance. I listen to what feels right and what doesn't feel right. And it's been very clear to me for a significant period of time that the President of the United States is incapable of executing the duties of his office. And it has concerned me for a very long time who in fact is executing those duties. Because no matter who it is, even if it were the vice president, and I can't believe she's competent to do it either, just again, based on my eyes and my ears, not anything I've read, just what I've seen and heard from her, and what I know about her professional background, whoever it is, including her, they weren't elected to execute the office of the presidency of the United States and the duties that are attendant thereto. So whoever's doing that, be it one person or multiple people, they're doing it illegally. They're doing it while deceiving the American public who voted for someone other than whoever those people are. I have found it for quite some time astonishing that anyone could advocate that he's competent to execute those duties. In the last few days, not just Jeffrey Katzenberg, but also Rob Reiner, who has been adamant and vocal and one of the biggest bundlers of donations for Biden up until the debate, and even right after the debate. Today, Rob Reiner came out and said he needs to go. Biden needs to step down. You can't hide it anymore, even if you're one of the people who've been hiding it so far. And the reason is 40-some million Americans watched that debate. They saw with their eyes and they heard with their ears. Now, if any of them are still making the argument or trying to, that he had a bad night or he had a cold or he didn't get enough sleep or whatever nonsense anyone might try to come up with to explain what was clearly medically based cognitive and physical limitations, whoever might still be doing that is lying to you still and lying to themselves as well. Because there is no justification and there is no explanation other than he's incompetent. He's medically incompetent. He's cognitively incompetent. And where does that leave the country? The Middle East is a tinderbox. Ukraine is a tinderbox. At any moment, Xi Jinping or Kim Jong-un could be the start of a war. So who is monitoring all of it? Who's got their hands on the briefcase with the nuclear codes? But for the moment, I just want to back away from all of the fear-based thinking that this kind of track can lead to, and I just want to go back to truth and lies. Because all of those people who've been telling you otherwise have lied to you, and so you should not trust them. And you should rightfully not trust them. You now have a basis for not trusting them. But more importantly, you need to be asking yourself why you didn't trust yourself. Because I have to believe that the majority of people who have been telling themselves and you, or their neighbors, or their family members, or their friends, up until that debate, that he was competent to be president of the United States. They were lying to themselves. You were lying to yourself if you were doing that. Why would you do that? Well, there's two reasons, I think. One is you've always had a tendency to stretch the truth, to lie, to make something convenient, to be what you wanted it to be. That's explanation number one. Explanation number two is a little more insidious and a lot more dangerous. And that is that you've been conditioned to believe lies to the point where in telling them to yourself, you believe them to be true. And this is the most dangerous position of all. And I believe that's what's happened to a lot of Americans. Because over the course of decades, certainly back probably to the 1970s, when our universities began to be infiltrated with tremendous amounts of money from foreign governments, we have been slowly manipulated, educated actually, in those universities, filtering down through our public education system and through the media, which has also been infiltrated. We have been slowly, like the frog in the water, with the water turned up, we have slowly been conditioned to believe that lies are truth. And at some point, we just said it's easier to believe what we're hearing than to do the kind of homework or face the kind of consequences that would be the result of saying, wait a minute, this just doesn't add up. This can't possibly be true. So why would people have been doing that all this time in the media, in government, globally? Why would people have been doing this? Well, the answer is the misuse of power to control others. That's the reason. You know, I have a friend who used to say, more is never enough for certain people. And when you look at people who lust after power, that applies with specificity. People who lust after power never have enough. No matter how much they have, they want more because it's like an addiction. And so we have a lot of people who've achieved a lot of money in a very corrupt system of capitalism that has gone a bit awry. Not the system, but the people operating within it. It's a pretty good system left to run on its own without manipulation. We have people who've gained tremendous amounts of money, fortunes beyond most people's comprehension, and along with it, a certain amount of power. The people in government have always had that power. But the slow drip of deception over the last clearly 50 years has led to a situation where those people believe they can do anything. They can even tell you that what you see with your eyes and what you hear with your ears is incorrect, is wrong, that what you see is the opposite of what is true. Therefore, don't listen to yourself anymore. Don't trust yourself. Just be fed the pablum of lies that you're spoon-fed every day through the media and from politicians. And most people acquiesced. At least half the country acquiesced because they reelected Joe Biden when he ran from his basement. I'm not saying they should have voted for Donald Trump. I'm saying they definitely shouldn't have voted for Joe Biden, and they shouldn't have tolerated that campaign either. There should have been a public uproar, but there wasn't, because we're talking about the same people who have bought the lie for 50 years. Now, Joe Biden. I think I've said this before. I once was in an office with Joe Biden, just the two of us. I had founded a political action committee in Pennsylvania years ago. And I was on Capitol Hill, and I met with him in his office. He was a freshman senator. I met with him in his office to discuss issues that were of mutual importance to Israel and the United States. I was young. I was in my 20s. So if you do some math, you'll get my age. But I was in my 20s. I remember leaving that meeting and thinking, well, he's a pleasant, charming, empty-headed guy. That's what I thought. I said, that's an empty suit when I left that office. And that is who he is, because he's been lying all of his professional life. And his professional life is really just his public life because he's never held a private job. He's been a government servant, serving mostly himself and his family ever since he entered Congress. So when Joe Biden gets up now post-debate, and he has an interview with George Stephanopoulos. And Joe Biden continues to lie. He's no longer lying to himself because he's done it for so long. For a long time now, he's believed his own lies. But now we're one step beyond that. Now we're with a man who has lost a great deal of cognitive ability. And mostly, he's lost most of the mask that people use until they start to have cognitive decline. Because when a person starts to have cognitive decline, they no longer are able to maintain the kind of masks, I call them, that moderated their extreme personalities. When they become cognitively challenged, the mask falls aside. And what you find is who the person really is. So Joe Biden is no longer lying. He's being who he is. He's in denial. He's in denial about his own capability, his own ability, his own physical ability, his own mental ability. He's lying. But it's true to him because the mask is off. And this is who Joe Biden is. He's a liar. He's a liar. And I say that with respect for the office of the presidency, which I have and have had my whole life. I've spent time in Washington. I've known United States senators and congressmen that I have met with personally and talked to about important issues personally. He's a liar, and he wants to be president again at your expense. How do I know that? I know that because when George Stephanopoulos asked him, "What if you lose to Trump in November?" his answer was, "Well, if I did the goodest I could do, then that'll be okay." Paraphrasing, but not the goodest word. He actually used the word goodest. So what was he thinking of when he answered that question? He was thinking of himself. He wasn't thinking of the country, because the best he can do isn't remotely good enough for the job he's got. But he won't let go, because more is never enough, because he lusts for power and has his entire life. And he has lied to get it, and he has lied to keep it, and he is lying now to get you to let him keep doing it at your expense. His answer should have been, "I care about the future of this country. I am aware that I'm not as sharp as I used to be, and that's okay because I'm in my 80s, and that's how it should be, with rare exceptions. And so for the good of the country, I'm going to step down now. For the good of the party, I'm going to step down now and give my vice president an opportunity to step into the role for which she knew she might someday serve when I asked her to be my vice president." He didn't do that because he doesn't care about you and he doesn't care about me. And most tragically, he doesn't care about the country he claims to have given his life to serve. He's never cared about this country, and it's in front of you now. Believe your eyes, believe your ears. This isn't about Donald Trump at all. I don't care what your party affiliation is. This is about truth and lies. This is about manipulation for power. This is about keeping the masses enslaved. It's never too late to awaken. And I'm not talking about being woke. It's never too late to awaken to what is light and what is dark, to what is true and what is false, to what is life enhancing and what is life deteriorating, if there's such a word in that context. It's never too late. It's not too late for you, even if you didn't wake up until 2 Thursdays ago when you watched Joe Biden incapable of having a conversation, let alone carrying the briefcase that has the nuclear codes in it. The way we turn the country around is by telling the truth. You've just listened to it for close to 20 minutes. Thanks for listening. I'm Carol Gold. I'll be back here again next Sunday, and until I am, by all means, think for yourself.
Carol thanks you for spending your valuable time with her. It is her mission to empower you to remember how smart and capable you are. Be sure to check out Carol's website, carolgold.com. That's Carol with an E, gold.com. Please leave a review and subscribe here so you'll be alerted to Carol's next podcast. Until then, above all else, remember, it's time to think for yourself.